Call to order the Lowell City Council Budget Committee for Wednesday, May 4th, 2022 at 6:10. Roll call, please.
Mayor Bennett,
Here.
Councilor Harris, Councilor Stratus, Councilor Weathers, Councilor Murray, Committee Member Bill George, Committee Member Lon Drott,
Here.
and Lisa B. Wilson is absent.
Okay, stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item out we have here is to select the budget chairperson. Does anybody want to volunteer? Anybody want to volunteer somebody? I volunteer more than
I was gonna say, can we do it?
We can, but
Oh. Wasn't sure.
I pick that back. I nominate Bill George. I bet you might.
I'll second.
A second that.
Yeah. Okay, discussion, thoughts?
He's
Okay,
making $3
we have
billion.
Brian made a, motion and Tim seconded to have Bill be the chairperson. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Yeah.
There's really
You
not
have
much to it.
you have an agenda?
We've got two of them there. Just one for each other. Stay away from the whole damn meeting.
All right, well, yeah. Okay, you're in charge.
Okay, we're gonna approval of the agenda.
We worked on that.
And that's,
We're down
we
to.
already did that.
No, we didn't.
Approval of the minutes.
No, we didn't
Okay,
do
we're
the
not
agenda
sure.
either.
Move approval of the agenda.
Okay, the minutes would be from last year.
Yes, so the approval of the agenda is first on the order of business.
I move approval of the agenda.
Second.
So it's been a move for approval of the agenda in a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Right.
Opposed? Now we go for the approval of the minutes.
Move approval of the minutes. You guys.
Second.
Been moved and seconded for approval of the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed
Aye.
say no. This is the April 28th, 2021. Well, that's wrong. This is the May 4th, 2021 Budget Committee meeting. Is there any old business? Any new business?
Yes, sir. The first item is the city administrator's presentation of the recommended budget, and I'll go ahead and kick that off.
Go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, Budget Committee members, members of the public, good evening. This is to present the city administrator's recommended budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2022. I have a 10-minute presentation. This presentation will cover key points from the April 28th budget message. Afterwards, we'll pause for questions. Then we can review the budget detail sheets that follow the budget message in more detail. So I would ask, hold any questions until the end of the presentation. One key point that I would like to highlight before we get started is that the budget is in a state of flux between now and June 30th. Some of the numbers that you see in the fiscal 22-23 recommended column may get shifted to the fiscal 21-22 estimate column and vice versa. For example, tonight, the city council approved an offer on a property sale that was included in the fiscal 23 budget. So we're going to have to shift that into this year's budget. While the numbers may change from next year to this year or vice versa, the financial impact on the city shouldn't change too much compared to what I've included in the budget. We can finalize these estimates between now and final budget adoption in June. The biggest priority for this budget and for the city is completing the 70 North Pioneer Street project. This includes moving the administrative and library functions into the new building. It also includes starting our library services after a 4-year hiatus. This slide summarizes the costs and the funding sources associated with the project. And you can find this on page 9 of the budget. The total project is budgeted at $701,052. This includes the base bid, the alternates, architectural fees, the IT and phone system, and so on. For the current year's budget, we budgeted $140,000 of our American Rescue Plan Act monies, or ARPA, in the general fund. ARPA was the big COVID bill that Congress passed in March of last year. For fiscal 22-23, I recommend that we program all of those general fund ARPA monies towards filling in our funding gap for this project so that we can make it happen. 2 changes have occurred to this table since I wrote the budget message. The first is that we were required to submit our first report to the Treasury Department on April 30th. In consultation with our accountant, I elected to declare that we have used a portion of our general fund ARPA monies for architectural and engineering fees that we have incurred up to this point. In other words, using ARPA funds as opposed to our general fund resources. So the estimated costs paid to date line is really ARPA monies that we have paid to date. And that number is a little bit higher based on invoices that we've recently received. It's closer to the 40-something thousand range. That also means the ARPA fund remaining line is going to decrease. The second change is that the U.S. Treasury portal shows that our allocation is $260,540, not the $240,000 that they originally reported to us. That's an additional $20,000 in ARPA funding that we can set aside for any unanticipated needs or issues that may come up with this project. I will need to factor in that extra $20,000 in the final draft of the budget. This slide summarizes the payment logistics for this project. The sequence starts with property sales. We use those dollars first, then ARPA dollars, then grants, then donations, and we use those funding sources first before we even touch loan dollars. In reality, the timing is going to be a little different because we have 2 projects. We have a library and a city hall, and each one has its own funding streams. But this is a general outline of how the accountant and I plan to fund this project. Let's talk about moving into the new facility. I budgeted a part-time librarian for the entire fiscal year. I recommend that we start recruiting a librarian soon with the goal of getting somebody on board in July. It'll be important to have somebody in place prior to the new facility opening so that we can have a smooth transition. I also budgeted for things like trash disposal costs for the current City Hall building. I budgeted for climate controlled storage rental until we figure out our long-term storage needs for our records at City Hall. We're going to have some climate controlled storage to tide us over. So that's in the budget. The Rolling Rock Park project is the next biggest project in the budget. The picture on the screen zooms in on the phase 1, which focuses on the southern half of the park. That includes a playground, walking trails, trees, relocating the forestry equipment. It includes irrigation improvements. We talked about this project in January, where we discussed the pending Land and Water Conservation Fund grant. That application has been pending since 2020, and it's for $240,000. That application requires a dollar for dollar match, and it's likely that the National Park Service will approve this in the fall. The council instructed me to seek additional grant funds to meet this dollar for dollar match, as opposed to meeting the match through loans. I followed through with those instructions, and I submitted an application for the local government grant program, a separate grant to fund this project. All told, if we get both grants, it'll be a $750,000 project. If we don't get the other grant, we're going to have to withdraw our Land and Water Conservation Fund application and figure out another way to make this project happen. The budget anticipates that we'll get both grants and we'll be able to start construction. If we don't get the grants, we're not going to spend any of the monies that are budgeted because we don't have the funds to back that up. We have begun the process to partition 3 city properties to sell as surplus. The one at the bottom with City Hall is going to change. This council already voted to move that partition line to keep the parking lot with Paul Fisher Park. The budget anticipates that we're going to sell these properties. It also includes some selling costs, like demolition costs for City Hall to prepare that lot for sale. 8 North Highland Lane is currently for sale. The City Council accepted an offer on that tonight. The recommended budget also anticipates that we're going to complete the 295 East Main Street transaction with a contract price of $375,000. That includes a right-of-way acquisition to the north of the property to consolidate it. And it also includes using that sale revenue to pay off the government capital loan on the property. For the 3 surplus properties plus 8 North Highland Lane, the budget anticipates that we use every dollar of that to finance the 70 North Pioneer Street project. Let's talk about the water and sewer funds. This budget recommends a 5% across the board water and sewer fee increase. The water fund has faced declining fund balances over the past 5 years. If a fee increase is not approved, we'll have to look at offsetting cuts to the water fund to turn that trend in the other direction. Before now and preparing the final budget, I want to take a more in-depth look at the water and sewer revenue projections with the Public Works Director. I want to make sure that the projections aren't too optimistic. And if they are, we need to figure out how to keep those funds in balance. But I'm going to be working on that in more detail. The revenues projections do take into account new and projected building. In other words, new customers that are going to be coming online. Personnel administration is the last major expenditure topic I want to cover. I recommend updating the pay scale. by bumping up the minimum starting salaries and the maximum salaries. This slide shows the changes that would occur if that recommendation is approved. This would put each employee on a new pay grade. It will give each employee a raise, though some employees will get a higher raise than others. I recommend adjusting the pay scale in lieu of a cost of living or merit increase. Finally, this slide summarizes some of my other funding recommendations. The Blackberry Jam Festival Fund has an appropriation because the committee is planning an event this year. The SDC funds and the street fund all have appropriations. I don't have particular projects picked out, but I do recommend giving these funds a budget so that we can work on any projects that we might identify with the new fiscal year. The exception is the sewer SDC fund, where I've budgeted the remainder of the master plan. The building fund has a $10,000 appropriation for new filing cabinets or other storage that we might need when we move. And the Paul Fisher Park well system was not included. We obtained quotes after the budget was finalized. It's possible that we can start this project before June 30th and do it in this year's budget, and the Public Works Director can talk more about that. At this point, I'll pause for questions before we move on to the budget detail sheets.
Go ahead, Blaine.
What were the most recent water and sewer increases and how much were they? I don't recall.
They're about 3%. Does that sound right, Max?
Yeah.
Well, that's the last 3 to 5 years of increase.
It's been three
We
years.
had one that was a 5% about 4 years ago, that's been 3 or less. And
We skipped a year, didn't have any increase, and came back with 5, and after that, it's been increased. But
Secondly, Rolling Rock Park, has that original budget been relooked at yet?
Yes, I looked at that before I submitted the application, and I collaborated with our landscape architect and our city engineer, and they revised those numbers.
So the 700,000 is revised number.
It did. The cost estimate went up, but that's factored into the grant application.
Right, okay.
I read that to remove the old office, you had a removal fee of 75,000. Is that an estimate, or somebody give you that? You take down the building and put it up there?
That's based on a professional judgment. The Public Works Director collaborated on that. We had 10,000 in asbestos testing, which is for the house that we did was 7,500, and this is a bigger facility. Removal fees, $50,000 maybe to truck stuff off. If there's asbestos in there, that's going to cost.
You have to pay legal wages?
If it's not over, if we have a public works project that's not over $25,000, we don't have to pay the BOLI rates.
It seems high. That's what budgets are for, is to make it high and come in lower.
That's exactly right.
You know, there is a lot more concrete there than previous. Trying to judge on the 2 other houses that we did call and get some rough estimates just to put us in a ballpark area that try to be, you know, conservative, make sure we do budget not complete.
Okay, if no further questions, I'll pull up the budget detail sheets and we can run through that. Okay, I'm gonna start on page 38. Page 38. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through the resource sheets, then I'm gonna go through the budget sheets, the line item budget. And I'm gonna pick out any changes, anything in the far right column, dollar change. That's the change from the recommended budget to the adopted budget. Anything greater than $5,000, I'm gonna pick out and briefly talk about it. And then I want to keep moving. If there's something that you want to ask me about, jump in, otherwise I'm going to keep going so we can get through this. All right. Page 38, first item, property taxes. That dollar change is based on the value of our tax base as of December 31st of 2021, as well as new construction that was closed out at the current tax rate. Account 110, 325, 4151, operating grant, the $90,000 change. The $140,000 budgeted this year was the ARPA grant. We're not going to get that next year. The $50,000 in the recommended column is the commitment from Blaine County for the 70 North Pioneer Street project. Library capital grant, $185,500 change. That was the Ford Foundation grant that we received this year. We're not going to receive that next year. $40,000 is a grant that we have pending for our open day collection. Parks operating grant, $500,715,000. That includes the increases due to the grant application that I talked about in my budget message. Water franchise fees, $5,475 increase. That is based on a 5% rate that we charge against the gross water fund revenues. So that's based off of my projected revenues for the water fund. Loan proceeds, $269,776 change. In the current year's budget, I included a $500,000 for a loan to meet the Rolling Rock Park grant match. We're not going to get any loans for that project. So the $230,224, that is the Business Oregon loan. Parks donations, $13,000. That is for the Paul Fisher Park Shade Tree Program. If we get donations this year, that number will change to this year's budget. Capital asset disposal, $337,197. That is assuming that we sell the 3 surplus properties, 8 North Island and 205 East Main Street. That number will change since we're going to sell 8 North Island this year. Page 39. Sewer operating grants, $20,000 change. That's a Business Oregon planning grant that we got this year, just recently, actually. We don't have any planned grants next year. Water sewer sales, $31,175. That is based on the 5% increase plus new customers. Sewer reimbursement, SDC, $6,180. That is a set amount that is based on projected new construction for next year. Water fund, water operating grants, $120,000 change. That is the ARPA funds funding the other half that was budgeted in the water fund. So we're not going to get any more next year. Water sewer sales, $80,037 change. That is based on the 5% increase plus new and projected customers. Water reimbursement SDC, that is a set amount based on new construction. Page 40, street fund, state distributions, $27,252. I developed the recommended projection based on what we're actually receiving from the state on a monthly basis. So that's based on actual projections. Building fund, building permit fees, that is based on a projected 20 new houses. And what I did is I took the average value of a building permit for a home and factored that into my estimate for next year. Page 41, sewer SDC fund, $5,355. The SDC funds are set amounts, and you multiply that set amount by the new and construction that we're anticipating. I went with 20 new homes. That's what the SDC funds are based off of. Okay, I'm on page 43 now. General fund administration fund. Insurance and bonds, $5,961 change. That is because I allocated insurances across the admin department, the library, the building department. There's going to be more insurance in the library because it's a big part of the building, so that's how I allocated it. If you look at insurance as a whole, there's actually a slight increase. Miscellaneous, $72,000. For building repair and maintenance, $72,000. That is for demolition and asbestos testing and other costs to prepare the city hall site for sale. Capital outlay, $40,417. That is based on the split between the library and the city hall. The library is a bigger part of the project, so it's going to have a bigger part of the capital outlay. Last year, I included most of it in the admin budget. Page 46, community development, land use and development costs, $5,000. Those numbers have been trending upwards because we've had a lot of development going on. Those numbers are offset by increased development permit revenues that I budgeted, and we're going to be more aggressive about collecting on those revenues and billing developers for actual amounts that are incurred as city ordinances allow. Capital outlay, building facilities. At the time I prepared last year's budget, we had not finalized the right-of-way issue with 205 Main Street. We now finalized that, so next year's budget anticipates that we're going to spend $45,000 plus some change for recording costs or whatever to acquire that right-of-way. $47, general fund debt service. These are actual debt service numbers. It anticipates that we're going to, it has the city hall and libraries broken out. That's the business Oregon loan. It anticipates we're going to pay off that loan with the property sales next year. That's what the bottom two numbers are, $140, $42, and $85, $182. That's the business Oregon principal. And it also has in the top line 307,980. That's the payoff of the government capital loan for 205 and 295 East Main Street. Page 48, general fund library. Other contract services, that is an extra $5,000 to pay for Penny Hummel in case we need her. Capital outlay, that is the split for the library portion of the project. The $40,000 is for the opening, equipment and furnishings is for the opening day collection. That's offset by a $40,000 grant. Page 50, general fund, parks and recreation, utility worker 2. I combined what we had in utility worker 2 with utility worker 1 because we really have 2 utility workers. So the utility worker 1 combines both of those positions. Other contract services, That was for the COVID cleaning. We don't need to do that anymore. Have the cleaning crew come out and pay them with COVID dollars. Non-capitalized assets, $11,000. We bought a lot of equipment last year. We may need to put some more money back into there, but that's for things like weed eaters, lawn mowers, and that sort of thing. We bought a lot of that yet last year, but before adoption, we might put a little bit more in there. Nelson land donation. We received a $10,000 donation from Nelson's years ago to maintain the property they donated to us. We had depleted all of those funds. I did put some money in there to spray down some whiteberry vines. Water services. The amount we've spent, it hasn't been as high as projected, and if we install a well, it's going to be even less. Parks improvements. That is for the Rolling Rock Park Phase 1, as well as the Paul Fisher Shade Tree project. Well, 51. We'll make the changes. 52. Make the changes. 53. Contingency, I budgeted contingencies higher this year than last year. If we don't have any contingency needs, those appropriations will lapse. I have a chart at the end of the budget message that shows ending contingencies plus ending reserves, which will show the general fund with an ending balance of about $165,000. Page 54, sewer fund. The utility worker, again, I combined those in one account. Page 55, buildings and facilities, $25,000. That's for a new gate at the sewer plant. Equipment and furnishings, $6,000. Can you talk about that, Max?
That is for scales for the chemical feed system. The capital, the funding for it.
We don't have any budget for that. Do we need to put something in there?
Oh, no, sorry, that is an item we budgeted for last year that we referred. Yes,
Okay.
that was the line locating foot.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a capital improvement for a couple of years.
And,
We do not plan to make any outside of the front gate.
and talk about the next one, sewer systems.
The sewer system, that is for some of the I&I work identified from the sewer master planning. Put a little bit of money here just in case there were maybe some low-lying fruit projects we could knock off, big capital improvements. We already have some projected camera TV work with a quote. So this is maybe seal on some manholes, maybe help out with a little bit of the I&I down the road.
You want to keep going with water fund?
Yep. Water funds, so page 56, same thing, utility worker one, the change, that is for combining the two, like the previous fund. Other contract services, this is because we budgeted money for the master plans of the water fund, that we didn't use. Lower that allocation a little bit.
Engineering services,
What's that?
engineering services.
Engineering services, so the change in there, that is for the master plan, so the appropriate location to wrap up the master plan, and then assist in some of the projects identified from the water master plan that we're also working. Page 57, water sewer franchise fees, obviously that changed a little bit with the 5% increase and the anticipated new home growth. That's just based off of the revenue numbers. Contingencies, same thing, lowered it, contingency down, we made the changes on that. Equipment and furnishings. So we do not plan to, this number was a budget last year for water meters, but it should have been the capital item, so we moved the water meter purchase to capital. And then that's it for water fund.
One more note on the water fund. We'll talk about this at a later council meeting, but I'm recommending that we buy a second set of 100 water meters by the end of the year. When you look at the water systems improvements estimate line item, that's assuming that we buy that extra 100 meters. And then when you look down at the reserve for future use, that is the remaining ARPA So if you add up the 66,584, 33,416, that should be 100,000. And then that 33,416, that moves to the next year. And that shows up in the water systems improvements. So that'll be 33,416 for the water meters, plus 10,000 for any unanticipated water system needs that might come up. All right, 58. Engineering services, I included an amount in there in case we want to work with the city engineer to update our roads master plan. The roads master plan hasn't been done since 1999. And then I included some other amounts in there for capital outlay in case there are any street improvements needs. We might also think about our downtown master plan. It talks about as some of the phase 1 projects, things like signage, entryway signage to the cities, things like that. So I included some amounts in there in case we want to do some of that next year.
Can that be paid for out of tourism?
It could, but our tourism grant is so small. But it could.
They also have other, separate grants from the tourism.
You're exactly right. Yep. All right, building fund. The building inspection service is electrical. That's all based off of new home construction that we're projecting. The biggest change is the equipment and furnishings. That's the $10,000 I mentioned about the filing cabinet or some other storage solutions for our building files when we move. Blackberry Jam Festival Fund, I included the budget for them. I think it's on the high side. But they do have a budget. The sewer SDC fund, the 99,000 is to complete the remainder of the sewer master plan. And the water, street, stormwater SDC funds, I have budgets in there, but we don't have any particular projects picked out. I have some amounts budgeted in case something comes up. The parks SDC fund, I have 80,313 budgeted for parks improvements. I'd like to see if we could do some improvements to the restrooms to open them back up, such as some secure locks, some stainless steel fixtures, something of that nature, as well as any other improvements to increase capacity of the parks. And lastly, the sewer reserve fund and the water reserve fund, those are for our USDA loans. Those are fully funded. Whenever our last loan payment comes due, we'll use the balance of those funds to make that loan payment. What questions do you have for me?
Interest rates are rising. What, have you seen any softening of permits coming in yet? Or any talk with folks about them deferring and not having the
No, we haven't seen any changes. We keep getting building permits trickling in. Have you seen any changes, Max?
So as of yesterday, Crestview Estates is total build out. Last two permits were turned in, all 26 homes built out. And as everybody knows, there's 2 more subdivisions, one currently in process. They intend to build as soon as they can. And first the one on that road. The demand is still there and interest rates are climbing. A lot of people did some lock-ins, get one extension on it. So I think we're still going to see some good growth.
Do you have any reservations about the debt service here? Is there any fear in your heart about the fact that we can't pay the bills? And the reason I ask that is because everything is increasing. And food that these people are buying, and gas and diesel fuel and every other damn thing. And we're sitting here thinking about raising the rates for water and sewer. And to go 5%, probably we need it. But can we do without it?
For the water fund, no, we can't do without it. And if a rate increase is not approved for the water fund, we're looking at pretty severe cuts to the water fund. It has had a declining financial condition over 5 years, and we need to get that turned around in another direction. And the sewer fund, it's not as dire of a situation. The sewer fund has more fund balance, and it could tide itself over for maybe a year or two. But it's you know, the cost of doing business is going up for both of those utilities with chemicals, electricity.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Wow, there really is. Question out there whether actually ought to be this severe.
But to your question, to your question, I am concerned about the water fund.
Would a 5% rate increase this law would ever affect the money? How do we compare our current rate?
According to my tenants, we're high compared to Cottage Grove and Eugene and Springfield, and the reason I just tell them, well, if you move to one of those cities, you got a lot more people paying. We're just not there yet. We're still in the trenches. So sometimes you have to pay for the fact that the air might be a little cleaner out there or whatever. But you still can't get too often crazy, right? You know, it isn't a lot of money. It's like $3.26 or something like that a month extra between the two of them.
Well, it was up on them.
About 5 between the two of them.
So, we used to have. there
About
was
1 gallon of
there was
gas.
a list of comparison.
Now, who are you buying new
I
gas?
don't know if you've ever- I remember seeing a list that compared other cities
Look at it, that was 1 gallon.
that high.
So, Gail, it's changed a lot since
Has
we
it?
had the list, but
Okay,
so the reason our bills are hard to look at because we have our bill, we look at our utilities and water. Period. Right, we don't have night, we don't have stormwater, we don't break everything down like Crestwell, Cottage Grove, grid. Our water rates technically are low. What we pay for water, but we pay a flat rate for sewer, and as you guys seen before, about $63. So that makes our overall bill about the same as the people. We're about middle of the road for utility bill, but we're lower on like property taxes. So that graph number, it showed everything. It showed what people pay in property taxes, what they pay for water, sewer, storm, I&I, which is fees that we don't even have yet. Public safety, almost all communities pay a public safety parks fee. But that list has changed drastically over the last 2 years.
And in retrospect, Eugene has gone up as well. They just had a pretty good sized rate increase. I heard that on the news some time ago. And I think Springfield's right along with them. So I suppose it's in order. It's hard. It's hard because a lot of families are really having a tough time. And we're just making it a tiny bit tougher. And I'm just hoping or wondering if there's any way we don't have to do it this year. But I could be wrong.
Well, we still have our assistance program, I think, that we can extend further. I think it's still in existence at the moment. So, but I feel you, Bill, I got a 1% pay raise this year and everything's going up 5 to 8%. So, you know, my overall, standard of living is down, 6 to 7% based on my rate. So I get it, but there is some options that we have left in place to assist people who maybe can't afford the rates that we have, and we could look at keeping those in place to help the people that truly are in need.
That's a great point, Tim, and the council did approve an intergovernmental agreement a few months ago with Lane County Social Services for the low-income water program, where if you qualify, the Department of Social Services will pay your bill for you.
I think getting the word out is important along with this rate increase. I think we try to be proactive about getting messages out for this program. We haven't had a crazy amount of applicants for it. There's probably a lot more people in the city that are eligible for some of these programs. And continuing to try to get the message out is important as we do this kind of a rate increase.
One of the things we have in favor is that this is really a desirable place to live. Case in point, I just had one, number 40, bought a home down in Brunswick, or Cottage Grove, I guess, and I've already rented it. They moved out, and it's coming back up again on the 15th. And it just goes that quick. So just tough.
Yeah, we hate to do it.
It's hard to vote for it. Go ahead there, Bob.
I was just wondering how we're progressing with the water meter change out. We're having some old water meters that weren't registering well.
We are, and we're seeing increases from that, anticipated revenues for that. But the offset, like Jeremy said, electricity, chemicals, those, the electric just had another one, we use a lot of electricity between the plants and the city. And, everything cost of doing business with them, all of our goods and services, so every piece of little thing that we normally order went up. So we're right at like 56% on the water meter change out. With this next 100 we're going to do before the end of the year, put us 350, and then July 1, not counting brand new buildings, we will have all the meters except for oversized, 2 inch and larger, changed out to the new system. So we anticipate seeing a little bit of capture. That's why we have the numbers that Jeremy had on there. They're capturing more customers, but it's just not enough.
I was just wondering.
Yeah.
We're recovering from no meter reading.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have one.
I'll be quiet.
No. I had it on mute. I don't know why that happened.
Well, move into the next item. All right, next item is public hearing on potential use of state revenue sharing fund. Public hearing is now time is
1856.
Okay, the purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to suggest potential uses of state revenue sharing funds. The city of Lowell estimates that it will receive the following in fiscal year 2023, 22, 20, and 23. State revenue sharing will be 12,000. Cigarette tax is 3,700. Liquor tax will be 22,000, and marijuana tax 6,000. Hearing's open.
You gotta ask it.
I'm sorry.
You have to ask if somebody wants to testify.
Okay. Somebody want to testify?
Come on, Hall.
Wait,
Stop looking at me. I'm not saying anything.
Hearing no testify, the public hearing is now closed at 7:50.
7 o'clock.
All right. 7 o'clock. That'll give us 2 minutes to rest.
Sir, did we do the public comments on the recommended budgets? Did we already do that?
No. And just also this, individual line, state funding,
Yeah, well, you want to do each one separately? I read them all off.
No, he means on the first page at the bottom. Further comments on that,
Number 2 under new business.
Well, public comments on the recommended fiscal year 2022-2023 budget.
Yes.
Thought we did that.
We were talking, I think they were
receiving,
questions.
state funds.
we were talking, but you didn't ask the public if they had something to say.
Oh,
Because they all look like they're committee members at the table.
doing okay there, public?
You say public or public?
Here,
I have no comment.
Okay. So the public comments have been satisfied. And the public hearing on potential use of the state revenue sharing funds has been satisfied. And now we're going to go for consideration of fiscal year 2022 and 2023 tax rate of 2.1613. Secretary should suggest a motion.
This is Lon. I move to approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 tax rate of 2.1613 per 1,000 of assessed value.
For a second,
second,
the Marine. So it's been moved and seconded that we consider 2.1613 rate increase for the year of 2022 and 2023. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Those opposed? Say no. Motion carries. And then the consideration of the fiscal year 2022 and 2023 recommended budget, just a motion, is I move and approve the fiscal year 2022 and 2023 budget for the city of Lowell, Oregon, in the amount of $4,862,173, of which $260,054 is unappropriated and reserved.
I second.
I was only reading.
Amazing too. So I second it.
It's been moved and seconded. That would consider the fiscal year 2022-2023 recommended budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Is there any other business? There are no other business. We're adjourned.
Same tax rate.
7:02.